Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and you take time to listen into the podcast. And because you've been such faithful listeners, we've been ranked in the top of all podcasts globally, according to Listen Notes. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. And I wanted to let you know we have a new website for the podcast. leadershippurposepodcast.com, leadershippurposepodcast.com. So head on over there and check out all the exciting things we have for you. But for today, I'm talking with Karin Freeland. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Karin. Karin is an award-winning author and certified life reinvention coach. She focuses on helping professional women transform their lives, overcome fears, achieve their dreams, all without sacrificing time with family and friends, without sacrificing their health, and without sacrificing their self-care. I mean, Karin, who doesn't want that? And she has created a brilliant signature program that combines lessons from all the years, 15 years of her experience in corporate, and she puts it together in a methodology developed for you and refined it recently. And we're going to hear more about that. All right. So welcome everybody to Karin Freeland.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here.
Me too.
Now, I noticed when I was reading your introduction / bio, I did not say the title of your book. Let's throw that in there now while I'm thinking of it. Tell us the title of your book.
Yeah, it's called Grab Life by the Dreams, the essential guide to getting unstuck and living your purpose.
Oh my goodness. Wow. We definitely didn't want to leave that off. I knew we were going to bring it up in the conversation anyway, but I wanted that right up front. I love it.
Thank you.
All right.
I wanted something bold, that's really like, yeah, let's grab life by the dreams.
Grab life by the dreams. That's a movement.
Right? It is. It is. It's more than just a book title. That's for sure. It's a way of life.
It sounds like a movement. All right. Mm-hmm. So before we talk about that more, you heard me read just some about you, but why don't you just tell us in your own words more about you and then about the work you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to start with this because I always forget. I'm a mom and I have two boys, 12 and 14, and I'm also married. We're based in Greenville, South Carolina, and we have a dog, Kobe. He's a Shiba Inu. So I'm learning to be a Shiba mom, and it's a whole beast of its own. If anyone out there has Shibas or know anything about them. What I do for work, I like to call myself a recovered corporate workaholic. I spent, like you heard, 15 or so years in the corporate space, chasing paychecks and titles. And all of a sudden, I woke up one day and realized none of this is making me happy. And I had a full-blown midlife crisis at the age of 39, asking all the big questions. Is this all there is to life? Why was I put here on Earth? Am I really just going to make PowerPoints and justify my existence to other people for the rest of my life? And I really didn't know what to do with those answers because I knew I wasn't happy, but I felt stuck. I was the breadwinner. There were all these things going on. It's like, how do you walk away from a 6-figure salary? But as luck would have it, eventually the universe kept sending me signs, and I ended up getting laid off from my job, writing my first book, which was a memoir, and realizing, nope, the universe is telling me something. And as I started to shift my own life, I realized, wait a second, I have the keys to help other women change their life. I can't keep this to myself. I got to go out and share this. And about the same time, I learned about life coaching, and it was just this divine movement in my life that was like, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to no more corporate. You're going to be a full-time life coach. You're going to help other women change their lives and achieve success on their own terms. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
I love that. And I didn't know that. I mean, you and I have had conversations in the other group, but I didn't know that about you. And you have something in common because earlier in my professional career, I had a similar experience. I thought to myself, there's no sense of meaning in this work. And I really felt like for me, I needed to be doing something that made a difference in people's lives. And so
Yeah.
I set out on a quest. I left that like you. I left that. Well, the universe helped you in that way. I was helped in my body, and I know you can talk more about this too without
Mm.
sacrificing your health. My body with headaches and nosebleeds started telling me, this stress is too much because you're doing work that's against who you really are.
Oh, yes.
I was in a bank in a leadership role, and I left that role at a young age. I was like still in my 20s and went on a quest to find meaning and purpose. You were fortunate because you kind of found it soon. It took me a journey.
Well, it's hard, because we're told in society that these are the things that are supposed to make you happy. You get a Benz, you get a nice house, you go on lots of trips and do all these things. You have Prada bags and whatever. And I'm like, I got a Jimmy Choo bag, cost me $895. I freaking hate that purse. It sits in my closet. Every time I stick my hand in, the zipper cuts my hand. I'm like, this doesn't make me happy at all. But am I broken? Is it me? Is the problem me? No, it wasn't me. I was in the wrong situations. I was listening to the wrong influences and not turning inward, which is one of the things I always tell my clients. We got to start by turning inward. Like, what is this that you want out of life? And then we can help you get there. But if you're still listening to society, yeah, you're going to end up with all kinds of health problems. I had silent acid reflux. I was diagnosed with that. Thought I had throat cancer. Thought I was going to die. But thank God it wasn't that severe. And I had a lot of grinding of my teeth at night. So I've got like 3 fake teeth because I cracked them all and then had to get root canals and it was a mess. But it was one of those things. It's like, well, this is adulting. I'm just going to keep sucking it up. I'm like, it's crazy what we do to ourselves.
Yeah. So what was because this might, encourage other people. There might be someone who's going through a similar thing. And by the way, from my story, even though it took 20 years or so to find it, I did find it. And now I always have meaning, purpose, and fulfillment in everything I do. And I actually teach people how to do that. Side note, but I wanted to conclude that story. All right.
Yes.
So how did you knew that the universe helped you by moving you away from that, but how did you then reconnect to the thing that is clearly part of your passion and purpose because you're just lighting up as you're talking about it? Tell us a little bit about how you got from there, from all that you were talking about, the acid reflux and the grinding, to where you said, this is for me.
Oh, there was a ton of exploration. So it was probably about a 1.5 to 2 year journey from really going, okay, there's a problem here. Something needs to change, and actually stepping out fully on my own. And so everyone, you're going to find this in a different process for you. But in my book, Grab Life by the Dreams, part 2 of the book is completely dedicated to all those steps. So for example, one of them, like I just mentioned, turning inward, right? Really reflecting and getting honest about what was working in my life and what wasn't, coming up with that North Star, because I could tell everybody what was wrong with my life. I just didn't know what to replace it with. And I didn't know because I'd never been permitted to really dream or empowered to think about, well, what would it look like if I didn't go to work 9 to 5? From there, it was a lot of adding in hobbies, rekindling some of my passions with no worries about it becoming a revenue stream, like just dancing for the fun of dancing, or, taking a class in photography just for kicks and giggles, and seeing like, I don't know, maybe this would turn into something, or maybe I'll meet my next boss, and just really having this time of play and experiencing hobbies. I was working 24/7. And so it was really hard to fit that in, but I needed to start getting real about my priorities and finding time to fit it in, because I had plenty of time to binge watch news and shows and all these other things and scroll on social. But again, I was like, okay, now I got to be honest with myself. If I can fit that in my schedule, I think I can fit in going for a yoga class. And another big piece of that for me, and you talk about this all the time on your show, and I'm so glad you're giving space for this, but it's that purpose and meaning. And so volunteering became a very big piece of what I do, both through my first book and giving funds from proceeds from the book to Alliance for Period Supplies to help alleviate period poverty for disadvantaged women. And then also, even now, just giving back through the junior league and volunteering in our thrift shop called the Nearly New Shop. And so that to me fills my soul in such a way that sometimes I think we can give ourselves a little wiggle room and forgiveness. Like the job wasn't wearing on me so much towards the end the way it had been before, because I was starting to find joy and pleasure from all these other areas of my life.
Ah, yes, yes. Okay, so now let's talk about your author self in the midst of all this. All right. So now you wrote this book. Tell us again. I love that title. So tell us the title again so people could refresh their memories, but also the premise. What's the main point of the book?
Yeah. Grab life by the dreams, the essential guide to getting unstuck and living your purpose. I mean, the message is you don't want to have a regret-proof life, or you don't want to have a life full of regrets. And I want to help you make it regret-proof, right? We are going to give you all the tips and tools that you need to go from stuck and frustrated to truly living an intentional life. So many of us are just blowing in the wind. We're going with the flow, but we don't realize that we're on the wrong path. We're blowing to the wrong direction. And then we're going to wake up one day and we're going to be unhappy, and you're going to have this whole existential crisis like I did. And what I want to do is help you have that contained. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on the show, but you can edit it out if not. This what I call the oh shit moment. Like that moment you realize your mortality is real. Like you're not going to be here forever. And so how do you face that in a contained way without having to experience a couple of deaths in your family like I did to really shake you awake? And so really it's just a book of empowerment. And as the woman, Dr. Rebecca Heiss, who wrote my foreword, says, there's a real bias to action. I love self-help, and not to put any self-help books down, but so many of them you read and you go, oh, this is interesting. This is interesting. How does this apply to my life? Or you get really excited about something, but then you just go right back to how you were living. And so this really aims to create habits in your life and to give you workbook style pages. There's a make it happen section at the end of each chapter that's like, okay, this was my story. These are the premises and the principles that I taught you. What does that mean for your life? How are you going to apply this?
Yeah, that's great, because it's always good. The teacher in me says it's great to
Yes.
have something to apply. So now tell us that you had written a memoir before you started this book. So there was some writing in you already.
Yes.
So when you wrote this book, tell us about the decision to do it and a little bit about how you started and how it all came to be.
Yeah. I mean, this book was a no-brainer, right? This was everything that I had lived. This was the transformation that I went through. And I thought, if I can show other people how I did this and the drastic 180 that I was able to do, it's really going to give others some hope. And I think people listening to this podcast right now are going to be shocked if they go get this book and they read that first chapter. It opens up on me in the midst of one of my panic attacks. And so I'm taking you right in. We're diving deep on the first chapter. I mean, this is like really in your face. But to hear that and go, wow, she went from such hopeless desperation to thriving and living her dream life. Well, my gosh. Okay. My situation isn't even as bad as hers. Like I could do this. So I think there's just a real message of hope in there. And so I wanted to write it for those women who were feeling the pain that I've felt and struggling and feeling like, I can't talk about this. I mean, what are you supposed to say to somebody at work? By the way, do you ever think about death? I mean, have you seen the Barbie movie?
I have.
Do you? My favorite scene in that whole movie, and I have mixed emotions. We don't have to go there, but I'm mixed on the movie. But my favorite scene, hands down, is when Barbie is having her girls' night party at her house. And all of a sudden she goes, does anybody ever think about death? And like the record scratches. It is so clear that this is not an acceptable topic in our society. So if I can give people a safe space to confront these big questions in life and let them go through this process, and they can come out on the other side living their purpose. Oh, my work here is done. It's just like I'm living my purpose by
Yeah,
putting out this book.
that's fabulous. That's fabulous. All right, so I'm guessing there are some authors listening too, and so let me ask you some more, at least one more author related question.
Yeah.
What, well, let's say, what has been your biggest joy as an author? Joy or reward?
Yeah, I would say definitely getting the feedback from the readers. I had one woman who came to my book launch party. She got the book and she messaged me on social a few weeks later and she's like, I needed this so bad. Thank you. This has changed my life. She's like, I just wrote my first RFP for my business. I'm opening my doors. I got my LLC. And she's like, I'm doing this. And that kind of feedback, those messages, it's like, okay, it's getting through to people. It's working and it's working. That's the biggest thing, right? Because as an author, you're always like, I know it works. I've seen it in my clients, but you're like, does it translate to just reading it in a book and then being able to apply it? And it does. And that's just so rewarding.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. And I think it's a good reminder for authors to think about in the challenging times, to go back to those times like the one you just described.
Yes.
Well, speaking of challenging times, what has been either one of the best ways of getting the book out into the world, or something that has been a challenge in getting the book out into the world?
Well, I'm in the challenge category. And I'm always looking for new readers. And I think it's really hard to get outside of your own little circle. And I've tried all the ads on BookBub and other platforms. And for whatever reason, I just can't crack the code. I've tried custom ads. I've tried to make them on the platform with their suggested formats. And that just hasn't worked for me. So much of it has been going on podcasts, talking about it, letting people experience me. Because I feel like once they're around me, they're like, whoa, she's got energy. I'm picking up what she's putting down. I want more of that happy juice she's got. And then they'll go get the book. But sometimes just seeing about it, hearing about it, they don't know yet. They're unsure. So, I just continue to show up and put it out. I'm in it for the long haul. Like we're in the long game here. Would I love to have sold, 10,000 the first week? That would be wonderful. But I'm so confident that it is going to get there.
Yes.
That I'm just going to keep rolling with it.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. Yeah. And what you just mentioned is common. I hear that in our guests. It's the way of books, right? And it's it's just the way it is. But you have a good attitude toward it, and I believe you will reach your goals. Absolutely. And it's good for other authors to hear, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. All right. So speaking of other authors, the podcast, I'll remind you, the podcast is for what I call high achieving women. Mm. Now, my definition, maybe everyone has their own definition of high achieving woman, but this is what I mean. A high achieving woman is a woman who is ambitious, goal oriented, professional, responsible. She's responsible at work and in her business. She's also responsible at home. People come to her for questions, whether it's related to anything she is in her background or not. They come to her with questions at work. And
of course,
she's the one that is supporting everyone else typically. And she's good at a couple things. And so people feel like, well, she doesn't need any support because she's good at a couple of things and she's doing all that. Right. And then add on top of it, she's written at least one book.
Yeah. You rock stars, you.
So people like you and others who fit that description, that's what I call high achieving women. So I created the podcast so then we could support each other. Right. Like, well, who supports us? We support each other. So this is a way to speak to each other. All right. So now with that background in mind, what would you say? What's a word of advice from either your professional life or your personal life that you would give to the woman I just described?
Yeah. So I have two things. I hope that's okay. Because the one thing I thought about this question ahead of time, and the one thing I really felt called to share is not to give up. There are so many ups and downs on this roller coaster. At least that has been my experience. And there have been so many times where I have thought, I'm going to burn it down. I'm burning down the business. Forget writing any more books. Like, I'm done. I'm just going to crawl in a hole. whatever. But I was brought to light this story, and I originally had it in my book, and my editor ended up taking it out, but I love it, and I'm going to share it with you. There is a tool out there that's created that you may have never heard of before. I had never heard of it. It's called the Leatherman tool. And this Leatherman tool is this multi-purpose tool. Well, apparently, the gentleman who created this could not get into box stores. He kept getting no after no after no. It was, I believe, 8 years before he finally got the yes. And a big department store picked it up, and then it took off like hotcakes, and then it gets in everywhere, right? And I think, how many times are we in those first 8 years of our business? But we're actually probably only been in business 3 years. And because we are so high achieving, we're like, why aren't I killing it? Why aren't I making 7 figures yet? What am I doing wrong? And I also learned that there was a couple who was out ice fishing, doing something, and they fell through the ice. And just as they were about to relinquish to the elements, sink to their death, the husband realized, wait, I've got a Leatherman tool inside my shirt, pulls this tool out. I have chills just saying this, puts it in the ice, pulls himself out, and pulls that woman out, his wife that he's with. This tool saved, I'm sure, countless people's lives, but these people's lives. And oh my gosh, what if he'd quit in year 2, in year 4, in year 6 or 7? No. So when I'm tempted to quit, I always remember the story of the Leatherman tool, and I'm like, I can't, I'm so close. I know it. Just keep going. And the only other thing I want to just quickly share, though, ladies, is watch out for the burnout, because we have such a hard time. We are so passionate about what we're doing, and we are doing such meaningful work that sometimes we forget we need to sleep on the weekends, and we need to take a day to go to the spa, or just say no and close down your business between Christmas and New Year's, or whatever it is. So give yourself that grace. Don't quit, but also know when you need to take a break and listen to your body. So that would be my advice.
Yes, both of those, that advice and that story, man, that story really is inspiring, and it is a message for keep going, just keep going. Yeah. Now, I always ask people this question, and we can guess based on the topic of your book, but let me just ask anyway, in fairness. The podcast is Leadership Purpose. So do you think it's important to have a sense of purpose in your work? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
Yeah, I mean, 100%, I do think it's really important. But I sort of alluded to earlier, sometimes purpose doesn't come from our job, but for whatever reason, we're in a season of life where maybe we've got really big college payments for our children, or we've got a medical situation, or there's some reason why we just kind of got to tough it out for a little bit of the season. And that's where the other areas of your life, it's important to look at purpose and meaning there. You know, or is there purpose and meaning in being a parent, in being a caregiver, in being a volunteer and giving back? Maybe it's girls in STEM or something, whatever it is that you're passionate about. Where can you find those other areas and avenues in your life to bring that purpose and meaning in? And then I think, we have a more well-rounded life and a more purposeful life, even if it's not coming from the work. But I highly recommend, if you can get it to come from your work, it's amazing, because then it really is true what they say. You'll never work a day in your life. I didn't believe it. I really didn't. For so many years, I was like, what? I'm not Serena Williams. I mean, I don't play tennis. Like, what do you mean you're going to love your work? Turns out, actually, Andre Agassi hated tennis with a deep, dark passion. I share that story in my book as well. And it's like, who wants to be doing something that they hate with a deep, dark passion, right? So what about, you think of people having a talent, and it's like, yeah, of course they love what they do, but there is something out there for you. It took me till 40 something years old to figure it out, but once you do, you'll be golden.
Yes. All right. So I'm guessing now people are wondering, hey, where can I get the book? So tell them where can they get the book, or how they can connect with you, or both.
Yeah, well, I hope they're wondering that. That would be wonderful. So go grab Life by the Dreams. Get the book at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold digitally. You can also go to my website, karinfreeland.com/dreams. And just a reminder, Karin is spelled Karin. And of course, you can always find me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Karin Freeland.
Okay, Karin, thank you so much. I really appreciate you for sharing your time with us. I know you have lots of things that you could be doing at this point and sharing your passion and energy. Really appreciate you for being here. Thank you for that.
Oh, I loved it. There's nowhere I'd rather be. And you have such a wonderful voice for this. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, everyone. And if you want to connect with me, I'm on all social media channels, but I spend most of my time at LinkedIn. So at Robin L. Owens, PhD, at Robin L. Owens, PhD on all social channels, but mostly LinkedIn. Send me a message. I'd love to hear your response to this episode. And go check out the website, Leadership Purpose Podcast. Leadership Purpose Podcast. We have resources for you if you're like what Karin described earlier in the episode. If you're having work and it's not meaningful or have any fulfillment in it, there's resources for you. And if you're an author and you're thinking about how to expand your message and turn it into an online course, we have resources for you there. And so much more about the podcast and for high achieving women, as I described earlier. Okay, so until next time, everyone, this is Dr. Robin.